Well, Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Trust me, bro. I've seen the files. And more importantly, I've seen the video. That's exactly what FBI Director Dan Bongino just said on Fox News. Hang on, there's a video now? Oh, really? Here is Bongino saying he has video proof that Epstein killed himself, but not exactly video of the jail cell or the act itself. But trust me, bro, we're going to release this to the public. Watch.
I'm just telling you what we see in the file. I just want to be crystal clear on this. I am not asking anyone to believe me. I'm telling you what's there and what isn't. Right. There is nothing in the file at this point on the Epstein case, and there's going to be a disclosure on this coming shortly. We are working through there is video. That is something the public does not.
There's video of him killing himself.
No, not the actual act, but the entire MCC Bay, there was only one camera. There's video that when you look at the video, and we will release, that's what's taken a while on this. We are working on cleaning it up to make sure you have an enhanced, and we're going to give the original so you don't think there were any shenanigans. You're going to see there's no one there but him. Right. There's just nobody there. So I say to people all the time, if you have a tip, let us know. But there's no DNA, there's no audio, there's no fingerprints, there's no suspects, there's no accomplices, there's no tips, there is nothing. If you have it, I'm happy to see it. There's video clear as day. He's the only person in there and the only person coming out. You can see it.
Okay. So Fox saying, okay, yeah, there's video of every bit until he actually kills himself. We used to have video of him at every moment, but just not for whatever. But we have it up until the point. And the journalists are like, nothing else for me to say then. I guess this is a case closed.
This is why you only do Fox News interviews.
Yeah.
Like that you get no pushback.
I accept this unequivocally, sir.
Yeah. That's why, again, you won't go on independent media, do any kind of interviews. They're totally guarding these people from doing interviews outside of Fox. Absolutely 100%. Grass Guy in our Rumble chat says, I really hope Bongino has absolutely no choice but to lie. Zareel in our Rumble chat says, dude, what about all the evidence? And then Tucson Man says he's talking shit.
Okay.
I love that. Thank you for that in our Rumble chat.
To put it simply.
So we have lots of questions and still no answers. And here are just a few of my questions. Why did the medical examiner who wasn't at the autopsy rule it a suicide? Again, the medical examiner who ruled it a suicide didn't do the autopsy, wasn't there at the autopsy. Isn't that kind of important? Why did the medical examiner who did the autopsy, along with Michael Baden, world-renowned medical examiner Michael Baden, friend of the show Michael Baden, said that it was a homicide?
He says his injuries were inconsistent with the ability to self-inflict.
Yeah.
Like, you can't really break your own bones in this way if you hang yourself.
And he later said this is consistent with a homicide.
Yes.
Why were none of the EMTs or hospital staff interviewed by the DOJ? They were first on the scene. They also saw the body when it arrived at the hospital, right? Seems like an important group of people to interview.
Why was he taken off of suicide watch just days before? Why was his roommate moved out and it was decided he was not only not a suicide risk, but A-okay to be alone from now on? Was he coerced? These are all questions that Fox News should have said, okay, wait, no. Like, we can't just say he walks into a room and we accept that no one was there and that's the end of it. No, right?
Why was no one watching his cell at all? Former FBI agent turned whistleblower Kyle Seraphin is not buying it. He's here with us now. Kyle, great to see you again. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, y'all. I like the movie Dave a lot, for whatever it's worth.
Thank you.
And it's an Ivan Reichman film, which makes it even better. Just saying.
Yes. We watched it with all three of our children, ages 8 to 14, and everyone loved it. And
It's a fantastic movie.
Exactly what happened during the Biden years.
It is. And you know what would not be a good movie is a movie where a guy goes into a cell, they kill the camera, and then everybody just says he killed himself, and so we have to trust you, and that's the end of the movie. That's the roll credits.
No one would believe that.
That's not a good movie.
If you were pitching that in Hollywood, it's like, come on, no one's going to buy that. Wait a minute. The cameras are conveniently turned off. Everything. You moved his roommate out a few days earlier. You took him off of suicide watch a few days earlier. No one was there. The guards were sleeping. You didn't interview any of the EMTs or hospital staff. Like, no one would buy that in Hollywood.
The check logs were falsified.
Yeah, my wife is yelling at the TV when that happens. She's like, "No, they're going to get him." You know, like she's yelling. She knows what's happening next.
Right. Yeah.
Listen, I don't know if he killed himself or not, and I'm totally open to that being the case. But what you don't want to do, and I don't know how to tell these guys to stop self-inflicting. Don't go on television. They know, like Dan knows better. He's a media guy. Don't go on television. And then imagine if I came on your show here and I just, like, every time I talked to you guys, I just looked away when I said things that were important. And I just introduced novel information. Like, there's a video. And you go, "Oh my God, is there a video of the death?" And you're like, no, it's just a video, not the video. There's a video. It's just, these are self-inflicted wounds. Like, if you're trying to gain credibility and you want to do that, and I actually think he is trying to do that. I think he's trying to say things. I don't know what he's trying to say, but these are very imperfectly given, and they are even less credible when you're doing it with a Fox News crew that's just going to, I mean, at one point in time, they were like trying to hold his hand. He said he gave up everything, and now he's living in Washington, D.C. It's like, did you give up your multi-million-dollar stakes in businesses? Did you give up? Like, I don't want you to give those up, but like, are you saying that you don't have any money anymore and you're living on a government salary? Because I don't believe that. It's just, don't.
Yeah,
these are unforced errors. You don't, yeah.
Yeah, if someone didn't see that part of the interview, he was talking about how he's like, I'm basically divorced from my wife. He's like, I'm not actually divorced but I'm here in DC and I'm dealing with this. I'm not divorced, but right. It's, I'm not really. So it was like sort of almost like a crying moment about this. It was about, sort of himself rather than, the nation. I'm always sort of bothered when like politicians turn, or, people like that sort of turn it back on themselves. It's about me. The American people wanted these.
If you're getting interviewed about your story and you want to tell your story and why you did something, then great. But if you're someone who came out of an audience that had millions of people that listen to it every single day and everybody knows your story and they know why you're there, then you don't need to make it about you. You're there as the FBI deputy director, who, by the way, doesn't do interviews. The FBI deputy director doesn't do interviews ever. Like, when was the last? Did you see Paula Bate doing interviews? No. Did you see David Bowditch do interviews? No. You didn't see these people because they don't do interviews. It's not the job of the deputy. The director does a couple of interviews, and they're almost always puff pieces, and it's walk through, and this is how great our facility is, and we have the best people, and the greatest people love to come here, and then that's it. And like, they're never hard hitting. They never have been. It's strange to try to act like we're doing transparency, and at the same time, what I'm telling you is that I can't be transparent, and there's a video, but not the video, and you'll see it eventually, and we get body cam footage in days. And those are way more sensitive, like shootings and people that have, that are actively involved in this investigations. You get those videos. The FBI can't give you a video from a prison, from the BOP they've had for 5 years.
Where he's supposedly walking alone. So we need to look at this and clean it up, but we'll release the original so you don't think we did anything to it. But it's literally only him alone walking into a room.
What are you cleaning up?
This doesn't make sense. And also, I want to ask you if you heard this dog whistle to those of us who don't believe him, saying, "You don't have to believe me," but as if like, I still understand your side, but I'm saying this.
It's almost called is like argument to authority. These are not good arguments. Again, these are self-inflicted. It's a bad movie plot, and you don't need to do that. You just don't. Like, they'd be better off. I'm not a media consultant, but I can tell you who their media consultant is because I've dealt with her. Like, stop booking these interviews. Stop having people come out and say, we're going to give you some information, but it's going to be in a little while. You're not going to be able to run the clock out like this is a podcast and, coming up next week is going to be something really shocking. Make sure you subscribe. Like, that's not what's going on here. You're in charge of a federal law enforcement agency that also has intelligence problems. And we got real issues in that agency. And by the way, you can't go for 8 years and tell me that you don't trust the people that work there. And at the same time, you trust the file that you've got that came from the people that work there and did the investigation. You can't redo it. We talked about this last time. Have you exhumed bodies? Have you redone the toxicology? Have you had the eyes? Have you had somebody else look over the report? What is it that has convinced you? And you can make that argument. You actually could. You could say, listen, here's the things we did, full transparency. We've went out and we've exhumed a body. We've done a new toxicology report, or we reevaluated the evidence that was existing. We had these people look over it. We have fresh eyes. We took in brand new recruits right out of the academy and asked them for the perspective so they weren't tainted by any, whatever. Give me some reason other than I told you I saw the file. It's just, or don't say anything at all, which is also equally good, by the way. People will tend to forget. The sad thing is I saw Julie Kelly go out and say that the Epstein files are irrelevant and this case is boring and she's over it and they all got away with it and no one's going to be prosecuted. And I know how close she is with those folks. She was running that podcast circuit. She was on the radio shows. So is that my unofficial statement, is that we're never going to hear about it? Because that's what I got from it. And that makes me cringe at every level. I don't want this for America. I don't want this for these guys. Like, I actually want FBI reform. Even, and if we don't get Epstein files, great. Give me prosecutions. I think we talked about that previously. Wouldn't it be nice if people stop, stubbing their toes or putting their feet in their mouth?
Yeah. I want to play this for you because this has been a few years old now, but not a few years. Well, maybe about a year or so. This is the brother of Jeffrey Epstein. When asked directly by our friend Tucker Carlson, do you believe the suicide narrative? And here's what he had to say. Watch.
Do you think your brother killed himself?
Not now. No. When I first heard he was dead from suicide, I had no reason to doubt it, so I accepted that. But then after the autopsy and after Bill Barr made that asinine statement, I said, this was not a suicide.
But when you first heard the news, you thought it was a possibility that he killed himself.
Yeah, I accepted it as a fact. I heard it on the news. The government didn't notify me, as they said. I heard it on CNN in the morning of the 10th.
And you're his only survivor. You're the only surviving relative.
Yes. He has no children and our parents are gone. And there's no other siblings.
When did you start to think that he did not kill himself?
Well, after the autopsy and both pathologists, the city pathologist and Dr. Barden, came out of the autopsy and they said, this doesn't look like a suicide. It looks more like a homicide.
So what did you do then?
Well, I figured I'd have to look into this and see what's going on.
Were you shocked that he might have been killed?
It came as a surprise, yeah.
So as his only surviving relative, what did you do to find out what happened to him?
Well, I started to inquire about what took place. The Justice Department was supposedly investigating. The initial death certificate said pending when it said cause of death, which means pending further investigation.
Yes.
So, but then a few days later, it was declared a suicide by the chief pathologist, who was not at the autopsy. And the questions became what.
So Kyle, what stands out to you about that?
The pending is interesting. Usually autopsies take a while, in my experience with death investigations, which is only a handful. I worked on an Indian reservation for a while. Even when you have open and shut cases and it's very obvious, like I had a case where we walked in and, somebody had hung themselves in a very kind of similar manner, but it was clear it was a closed and locked house in a closed and locked room with no way in, and the body was hung in such a way that actually blocked the door so there'd be no way to exit. And you go, okay. And also the person was sitting at like a pretty low height, could have stood up at any moment and was clinically depressed. I mean, that's one of the questions you ask. Did this person have a history of suicidality? Did they have that possibility in their head? Were they clinically, in the mindset where they might do it? And when they say yes, then, and all the facts line up, then you have a pretty good answer. You can imagine very clearly that somebody who's fallen from being a billionaire and running around the world and having private jets and doing all kinds of scandalous stuff, and then suddenly not having any of that, not even being able to decide whether or not they had access to a bathroom, like that could be a debilitating scenario. I could see a spiral that happens, but I just keep seeing more and more questions and not good answers. When you want to go out and affirm and tell people the story, you lay your cards on the table and you play cards open. You don't need to play poker and keep things close to the vest. There's no privacy issues there. The only person that would have privacy would be the family member. And if he wants to know the answer, I don't know that he didn't kill himself. And I don't know that it actually matters as much to anybody at the end of the day, because all of this stuff ends up being, I think it's like a laser pointer where we're attacking the red dot on the carpet like the cat, and the hand that's moving it around is keeping us away from the fact that this guy was theoretically involved in sex trafficking of minors and a blackmail operation of people who are really powerful, and none of those people have been highlighted. And that's really the issue at the end of the day for me. Like people commit suicide, and it's sad, and it happens, and we lose far too many veterans and people that have like chosen an easy out or a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I don't think Jeffrey Epstein had a great life to look forward to if he was convicted, but I would really like to know the people that he was involved with, because that seems far more important. And I'd like to hear listen, we may not ever show you all of this stuff, but we're going to get some indictments on the people that were involved in working with this man. That would have been the right answer.
And so instead, we continue to, like you said, get these weird media narratives that we just feel like don't add up. Now, a couple weeks ago on our show, you said the FBI doesn't have like rooms of boxes, but they keep now saying, oh, we found these boxes
in rooms
that James Comey had hidden. I immediately thought of the room of requirement in Harry Potter. Like, this exists, right? Obviously. Watch this clip and then tell us again, is it possible or is this, again, fiction?
Or is this like the hand with the laser pointer? Exactly. Yeah, watch
it's
this
my ongoing analogy. Go ahead.
Wait till you read the stuff that's coming out.
Does he still have loyalists in the building? Because when I hear the FBI director saying, you guys are finding boxes that are hidden, okay, how does that happen in the Bureau?
Well, we were there a couple of weeks, and luckily there were a lot of people up there who grabbed us by the arm the minute we came in and said, thank you for being here. You know, we need to talk. There are people there who are really horrified at what happened. And there was a room, and we found stuff, a lot of stuff.
A hidden room.
I wouldn't call it hidden, but hidden from us at least, and not mentioned to us. And then we found stuff in there, and a lot of it's from the Comey era, and we are working our damnedest right now to declassify. And just so you know, because I get the public, I totally understand people saying, well, do it now. The process is not all the information is ours to declassify. Some is other intelligence agencies. It's not, we literally can't do it. Once that gets done and that gets out there and you read some of the stuff we found that, by the way, was not processed through the normal procedure, digitizing it, putting in FBI records. We found it in bags, hiding under Jim Comey's FBI. Quickly, you're going to be stunned.
Okay, Jim Comey hasn't run the FBI in a very long time.
Hidden rooms.
No. So
what do you make of that?
I have so many questions. Number one, somebody came up. You're trying to tell me that somebody came up at the J. Edgar Hoover building, the FBI headquarters, and grabbed you by the arm and said, I'm so glad you're here. Like the people that are in the middle of Washington, D.C., like the worst part of the FBI. It's an abominable building when you walk into it. I used to have key card access when I worked in D.C. I hated going there. You're just waiting for someone to sell you out and like not like the way that your shirt is worn or something. Like it's just full of people that are DC people. Somebody in that building came up and grabbed you by the arm and said, thank God you're here. That doesn't ring true to me. By the way, I had an FBI employee reach out to me today after seeing that interview and said 0 out of 10 chance that happened. Nobody reached out and grabbed him by the arm and said that they were excited to see him, because that wasn't the attitude. And this person's been working there for over a decade in that building. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like Dan is telling like an apocryphal type story. Like people were excited to see us, but like where those people were, if you're trying to tell me they were in the Hoover building, that's really hard for me to believe. You're also talking about people that have a vested interest in lying to you, in deceiving you, in putting you down rabbit holes. I've had people call and tell a mutual friend of mine who's a whistleblower attorney, say things like they're letting them run out rope on things that do not matter. And they're laughing about it and texting in the middle of like their meetings and briefings. So the people that are trying to keep the FBI director and the deputy director busy chasing their tails are sitting in the same meetings where the deputy director and the director are getting either advice and or laying out their priorities, and they're being mocked while it's happening in those rooms. I can't validate that, but that sounds true because I've been in the FBI and there's a lot of really nefarious actors. I've had people come and scream at me for doing things that made perfect sense, like asking why people took a knee for BLM, and I was the bad guy for it. So in an office and an agency that's particularly in DC that's full of those types of people, I don't buy the arm story. The second thing is like, what are these boxes of files that were not properly put into the process? First of all, what grasp do they have of what is or it is not the proper process? Are these things evidentiary? Are these things, items that were waiting for a shredder and they just didn't get shredded because they got thrown in a room because somebody is too lazy, which is very probable? How did they get created? Are these made on a typewriter because they weren't digitized? Like, what are they? What kind of documents does anybody have laying around? I worked in an old building when I was working for the Bureau out in Manassas. So I was on an offsite, and we had an old building. It had been there since like the 80s. And I remember going through some of the cabinets and finding old things. You know, you find like gyroscopic binoculars. I told my friend they were like 18 inches long and they were made for looking out of planes. They're really weird. So you find some stuff like that. I found a box of cassette tapes that were unopened. You know, I found like a Rolodex that had like a bunch of empty Rolodex spots in it, which people used to have. Like, you find old things in FBI buildings for sure, but are they of value? Are they specifically from Comey? And then like, if they're not digital, seriously, how were they generated? Where were they generated? Yeah. Why are they just printed with if they were printed off on any government computer and they are classified, there's a record of them at another agency. So what are they talking about? Like none of that makes any sense. There's so many holes in that story.
Right.
It just seems like a weird place to go.
New, like some kind of plant as well. Like, how do you know the authenticity of it? And I saw Mission Impossible over the weekend, and I know that if there's an AI crisis, there will be a room full of people typing out our history to remember
on analog tapes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's possible.
I couldn't find a typewriter at the bureau. They used to actually have what's called a steno pool. So there used to be people, the FBI agents would come in on cassette tapes. I have one of those old machines because they told me they didn't want it. And they'd put in like a regular cassette tape, like we remember from the 80s, and you hit record, and you would record your interview notes or like your field notes from surveillance, and then you would give it to a lady, it was always a lady, who would type it up on a typewriter and then give it back to you, and then you would go back and correct it for grammatical errors with a red pencil, and then you give it back to them, and then they'd retype it up. Like, is that what we're talking about? Because why is there an analog system of anything in 2025? And Jim Comey came in the modern era. I typed all my papers in high school and in college, right? And so did Jim Comey. So what was he generating? Are they handwritten notes of stuff? And why are they declassified? Like what made them classified? All this stuff is just like more questions than not.
Don't worry, Kyle, though. Next week, just trust us. We're going to have some big bombshells that we're going to release next week.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
How many weeks in a row have we now heard that, by the way? We've heard that every week. We were told. Kash Patel. We were told he did an interview like yesterday. Again, next week. Trust me, bro.
It's Thursday. They said in the next 1 to 2 weeks, you're going to see a wave of transparency. Today is the end of the second week. I have not been overwhelmed by the wave of transparency. I'm not encouraged by that. My buddies have this little inside joke on our group chat, and they're all former FBI guys. And they heard that the new Bongino rule, which came from Dan's old producer, is that you have to wait 6 to 8 months before you're going to get anything. That's the new Bongino rule, is to be patient, and it's going to take 6 to 8 months. The joke that we have is that it's 6, the number 2, the number 8 months. I don't know how many years 628 months is, but that's a lot of years. That's about how long it took for the JFK file. So we're probably in for a long haul.
75 years.
I hate being snarky, but like what?
No, but I mean, you've been here. I think you can be.
But all of us are willing to eat these words. We are
100%.
willing to. If we, none of us here we will all eat this happily if we do get this wave of transparency with explanations.
Yeah, I want answers on the sex trafficking operation. I want to know who these people were, these high-powered millionaires and billionaires that were paying for children to be shipped to their homes. Like, I want all of that. And I will gladly eat my words. I'll come back on here and I'll wear a dunce cap if I have to.
I'll wear one too. I'll make my own. All my kids make them. I got little kids. They love making a hat for dunce purposes. Nothing would make us happier than being wrong about all this, right? I mean,
yeah.
It just doesn't look like that's the way it's trending.
Can I chime in? Can I chime in real quick? Because what I want to know. So like they've got these boxes, these like smoking gun boxes he's mentioned. But if they're that important, why is there anything in there that's actionable? Why aren't you doing anything? Like I don't care if you can't release them to me. But use it. At least let me know you're using it. You found new information. Go do something with it. Let me know that. That's my hang up.
This is the worst situation this morning. Is I had to play a clip from Jim Comey, and he went on Wolf Blitzer's show, and he said, the top marshal at the Supreme Court is the one that's charged with looking into what happened to the Dobbs decision leak. And the Secret Service is tasked with finding out the situation with the cocaine at the White House. And the FBI never closes an investigation that's open, particularly into something like a weapon of mass destruction, like a pipe bomb with the pipe bomber on January 6th or January 5th. So who's the audience for that stuff? Like who? Right. And I actually agreed with Jim Comey, which makes me want to puke. I don't like when you have to go like Jim Comey's right. Like those are actually true statements. What is the audience for saying we're going to bring out these new cases and we're starting from scratch and all this other kind of stuff? You don't need to start from scratch. Just get new people on the same file. The file never closed. I guarantee it. So it's like, we got fresh eyes on it. Maybe that's the case. Who haven't been told to run away from whatever the truth was. But some of these things, they just don't ring true if you've ever done investigative work. Like nobody's going to just... Like you don't take the cold case and throw the cold case file out and say, I'm going to go to the bowling alley from 30 years ago where the shooting happened. Like you just don't do that. You just take the crime scene photos and give it to new eyes. So,
Kyle Seraphin, great to see you as always. Thank you for this perspective. And we'll welcome you back. We'll do a Dunce Cap Wednesday on the show. Yes. If all of this comes to pass, we'll gladly eat our own words and we'll gladly wear some new hats here on the show and celebrate this transparency, this overwhelming wave of transparency.
We need to do it with red, white, and blue. So we'll get color coded.
All right.
I like that. Yeah.
Sounds good.
I'm not afraid. Kyle, great to see you. Have a great
All right, y'all.
weekend.
Have a great one.